Across 10,000 years of Imperial history, there are stories the ecclesiarchy forbids even to whisper. Not of demons or Xenos, but of one among the Emperor's own sons. A Primarch so brilliant, so dangerously perfect, that even the machine god trembled. His name was struck from every archive, his worlds turned to dust, his legion erased. Yet deep within the data vaults of Mars, the Mechanicus still dream of him, the Iron Sovereign. The Lord of Logic, the one they once called Doom, before the Heresy. The Emperor walked among the stars with 20 sons. But not all 20 remained. 2 were lost, expunged from all record, their legions scattered, their names cursed. Yet there are whispers that one of them was not taken by chaos, but by reason itself. Recovered fragment, Sigma Obscura, record 99. He sought no gods. He sought equations. He believed the galaxy could be rebuilt if only the weak were stripped of emotion. That was his heresy. Not worship, not rebellion, but perfection. They called him the Iron Primarch. His creed was simple: order through knowledge, power through logic. To him, faith was noise, chaos was ignorance, and the Emperor himself, a flawed god pretending to be divine. But this is not the story of a monster. This is the chronicle of a mind that refused to kneel in another reality. Another timeline. The warp scattered his infant form to a world of iron and fire, where men worshipped logic as faith and sorcery as science. There, among engines and equations, a boy named Victor was forged in steel, and when the Emperor finally found him, he did not find a son. He found a mirror. When the Emperor's sons were cast into the void, each was flung across the galaxy by the storms of the warp. Some landed upon worlds of beasts, others among empires or ruins. But Victor's capsule did not fall upon soil. It descended upon a world of machines, a planet wrapped in metal and silence. There, the sky was black with smoke and the air shimmered with static. Its people were slaves to logic, bound by the worship of cold understanding. They called their world Dominus. Its rulers were techno-sorcerer kings, beings who believed divinity was a formula waiting to be solved. Among them, the child was found, encased in the shattered remains of his pod. His eyes glowed with a quiet green light, reflecting the energy of machines around him. The priests believed him to be a sign, the living answer to their endless equations. They raised him in the forges and data temples, teaching him the sacred languages of code and the hidden geometry of reality. As he grew, he mastered their sciences, surpassed their teachers, and broke their creeds. He built armor before he could speak the prayers they offered him. He silenced their gods by proving their limitations. And when they called him a prophet, he replied that prophets are merely those who understand too little too late. He was not cruel. He was absolute. In his eyes there was no emotion, only precision. He healed the dying with machines, rebuilt the crippled with steel, and reshaped the very laws of their society. Under his command, Dominus became a world of order, efficient, obedient, pure. When the Emperor came at last, his arrival was not as a savior, but as a test. The sky split with golden fire, and the armies of the Imperium descended upon Dominus. But there was no war. The people of Iron knelt in perfect unison, not from faith, but from calculation. They recognized superiority when it stood before them. The Emperor entered the citadel where Victor waited. Father and son met for the first time, one draped in divine light, the other in the shadow of reason. The Emperor spoke of unity, of mankind's destiny, of the Great Crusade. Victor listened, unmoved. When he finished, the Primarch simply asked, "And what place does reason hold in your divinity?" There was silence between them, a silence that lasted a heartbeat and an eternity. In that moment, both understood each other completely. The Emperor saw in Victor the mind he had always feared to create. And Victor saw in the Emperor the one flaw logic could never correct: belief. The Emperor named him the Primarch of the Iron Dominion. And so, the 21st sun took his place among the stars, wrapped in emerald light, his expression unreadable. For the first time in Imperial history, the Emperor had found a son who did not kneel. And perhaps, a mind he could never truly command. The legion that would come to be known as the Iron Dominion was unlike any other force created during the Great Crusade. When the Emperor granted Victor his gene seed and the command of 1,000 warriors, the world of Dominus rejoiced not with songs or prayer, but with the echo of forges roaring to life. The sons of Doom were not born in cathedrals, but in laboratories. Their oaths were not sworn to the Emperor's glory, but to the perfection of order. Each of them was more than a soldier; they were experiments in evolution, a merging of mind, machine, and will. From the beginning, Doom refused to follow the traditional doctrines of the Imperium. Where other Primarchs crafted legions inspired by culture, faith, or heritage, Victor built his army like an equation. Every warrior was a variable, every squad a formula, every battle a proof. Their gene seed was altered with micromechanical symbiotes designed to regulate emotion and enhance cognitive precision. Their armor bore no sigils of faith, only the mark of a single cog surrounding a human eye, a symbol of logic watching all things. They spoke rarely, fought without anger, and obeyed without hesitation. When they marched, there was no chant, no fury, only the rhythmic pulse of synchronized steps, the sound of calculated destruction. Their ships, too, were vast machines of symmetry. Their halls were lined not with statues, but with equations etched into steel walls, glowing faintly with green light. Within those endless corridors, the Iron Dominion built temples of silence, spaces where warriors meditated not upon faith, but upon clarity of thought. To the Mechanicus, Doom was both a marvel and a heretic. His understanding of technology surpassed even the Fabricator General, yet his refusal to worship the machine god was considered blasphemy. He called the Omnissiah a myth born from ignorance, a superstition wrapped in circuitry. And yet, they could not help but revere him. When he spoke, they listened. When he designed, they copied. When he commanded, they obeyed, half in fear, half in fascination. Whispers spread through the Forge worlds that the true Omnissiah had returned, and his name was Doom. The doctrines of the Iron Dominion were simple but absolute. Emotion is weakness. Faith is noise. Logic is purity. Every battle plan, every resource, every decision was processed through vast logic engines connected directly to the Primarch's mind. Through these machines, Doom saw the galaxy not as a battlefield, but as a living equation, chaos waiting to be solved. And he would solve it, one planet at a time. During the early years of the Great Crusade, the Iron Dominion became a legend. Where others fought wars of attrition, Doom waged wars of precision. Worlds that had resisted Imperial compliance for centuries fell in days under his command. His forces would strike without warning, disabling communications, silencing leaders, and dismantling armies before they could react. To those who surrendered, Doom offered order. To those who resisted, he offered extinction. Many worlds welcomed his rule. Under his governance, famine ended, industry flourished, and knowledge became the highest form of currency. He built vast academies and data temples where humans and machines studied side by side. He eradicated poverty, crime, and rebellion with mathematical exactness. But in doing so, he stripped away freedom, individuality, and faith. In his realm, every life had purpose, but no choice. And yet, for many, this cold peace was preferable to the chaos of war. The Emperor praised Doom's efficiency, but grew uneasy with his methods. Where others spread the Imperial truth through inspiration, Doom enforced it through control. His legion's worlds were orderly, yes, but they were silent, emotionless, empty of art, of soul. When emissaries from Terra visited, they described the Iron Dominion as a paradise carved by the hands of machines, inhabited by the shadows of men. The Emperor saw what Doom was building and realized it mirrored his own Imperium, but stripped of all humanity. Despite this, Doom was not without respect for his brothers. He shared designs and theories with Perturabo, trading concepts of siege warfare and fortification. For a time, the two found mutual admiration, until Perturabo accused him of treating war as an equation rather than an art. Doom replied coldly, "War is an equation. The variables are blood and ignorance." Magnus the Red, too, found fascination in Doom's mastery over science and energy. They debated for hours over the nature of the warp. Magnus called it the soul of the universe. Doom called it a flaw in the fabric of existence. To Magnus, Doom was brilliant but blind, refusing to see the beauty within the immaterium. To Doom, Magnus was a fool, worshipping the very chaos he claimed to master. The Iron Dominion's technology soon outpaced even the Mechanicus. They built living armor that adapted to damage, ships that navigated the warp without Geller fields, and weapons that bent reality itself through equations of energy and mass. But with every innovation, the Imperium's fear of Doom grew deeper. The Emperor demanded that all new technologies be shared with Mars. Doom refused. He claimed that giving the Mechanicus his creations would be like teaching a child to wield a sun. Still, his victories could not be denied. In the span of a century, Doom brought more worlds into compliance than any other Primarch save Horus. His conquests were bloodless compared to others, swift, surgical, absolute. But beneath the surface of perfection, a quiet arrogance grew. He began to see himself not as the Emperor's servant, but as his equal, the true mind behind the Imperium's design. He saw flaws everywhere, in the bureaucracy of Guilliman, in the pride of Horus, in the faith of Logar. To him, they were all relics of human weakness. He alone understood the truth, that only through absolute order could humanity survive. On Dominus, he built the first citadel of logic, a vast structure of black iron and green flame, where even the air hummed with data. Within its heart, Doom connected himself to a machine of his own making, a vast network that allowed his mind to see the flow of information across light years. For days he remained within the machine, silent and motionless. When he emerged, his eyes burned with cold light. He declared that he had seen the Imperium's future, and it was dying. The Emperor's dream, he claimed, was doomed to fail because it relied on faith in men, not mastery of knowledge. Humanity would one day fall to chaos not because of corruption, but because of emotion. The Emperor called him arrogant. Doom called him blind. And though both still fought for the same Imperium, a fracture had formed, one that neither reason nor faith could ever mend. The Iron Dominion marched on, flawless and merciless, their Primarch always watching, always calculating. To the galaxy, they were a beacon of progress. To the Emperor, they were a warning. For in Doom's perfection, he saw his own reflection and the shadow of the rebellion yet to come. Great crusade roared across the stars like a wildfire, consuming worlds and reshaping civilizations. Yet amid this grand storm of conquest, none matched the cold, relentless precision of the Iron Dominion. Wherever Doom's banners were raised, there was no resistance that lasted long. His strategies operated on layers within layers, calculated to anticipate not only his enemies' actions, but their very thoughts. To most, it seemed as if Doom could see the future itself. But he merely understood the present so completely that the outcome became inevitable. At first, the Imperium celebrated him. Planets fell into compliance without bloodshed. His campaigns ended before other Primarchs could even deploy. But whispers began to spread that Doom's worlds were lifeless, silent, and cold. That laughter was rare and prayers were outlawed. That his rule, though perfect, was suffocating. In one report sent to Terra, a remembrancer described visiting the capital of a compliant world under the Iron Dominion. The streets were spotless, the people efficient, and the factories operated with clockwork rhythm. Yet when she smiled at the citizens, they did not smile back. It was, she wrote, as if I had stepped into a machine pretending to be a world. Doom's presence spread like logic itself, inevitable and merciless. He restructured societies, dismantled religions, replaced ruling castes with data councils linked directly to his command network. To him, freedom was chaos. Belief was ignorance. He didn't conquer for glory or vengeance. He conquered to impose structure, to carve order into the bones of reality. The Emperor, though proud of his son's success, began to see the shadow of tyranny within that order. When they met upon the deck of the Invictus Aeternum, the Emperor spoke softly, "You bring peace, my son, but where is the soul in it? Man must not become a tool." Doom's gaze, hidden behind his mask, did not waver. "Tools build empires, father. It is men who destroy them." It was not defiance in his tone, merely certainty. And that certainty disturbed the Emperor more than open rebellion ever could. As the crusade expanded, Doom's brothers began to question him more openly. Guilliman, ever the architect of civilization, found in Doom a mirror he could not bear to look upon. In a council upon Macragge, the two debated for hours before their legions, the air thick with tension. Guilliman argued that humanity's strength lay in unity and moral will. Doom countered that morality was weakness in disguise, the illusion that emotion could guide progress. "You build an empire of men," Doom said coldly. "I build one that cannot die." Guilliman stood silent for a long time before replying, "Then yours is not an empire of men at all." Perturabo was more sympathetic, at least at first. Both saw beauty in engineering, both despised inefficiency and waste. Doom shared with him the schematics of siege engines that could fold matter itself, and in return, Perturabo revealed his theories on indomitable fortresses. But the partnership soured when Perturabo accused Doom of treating his warriors as replaceable components. "They are your sons," Perturabo growled. "They are my instruments," Doom replied. "You speak as if they are nothing." "They are not nothing, they are purpose." It was then Perturabo realized that Doom's heart had calcified beneath layers of logic. There was no warmth left in him, no trace of the brotherhood that bound the others. He was a machine in the shape of a god. Even Magnus the Red, who had once enjoyed long philosophical discussions with him, began to recoil from Doom's absolute denial of the warp, Magnus saw the warp as the infinite potential of thought and spirit, a sea of dreams. Doom saw it as infection, a cancerous echo of humanity's uncontrolled emotion. When Magnus asked him what he feared, Doom answered without hesitation, "Chaos is not to be feared. It is to be eliminated. The warp is the flaw in existence. It must be excised." Magnus sighed. "And what remains of man when you cut away his soul?" "Something better," Doom replied. During one campaign in the Eastern Fringe, Doom demonstrated the terrifying reach of his intellect. Faced with an orc empire spanning 6 systems, he unleashed a weapon of his own creation, the silent equation. It was not a bomb nor a virus, but a waveform of logic encoded into machine code and broadcast through reality itself. Wherever it spread, the orcs' biology began to collapse, their minds unable to process the paradoxes it generated. Within days, an entire species screamed and died, their bodies liquefying under the weight of mathematical impossibility. The Mechanicus called it divine. The Emperor called it monstrous. Doom called it necessary. It was after this atrocity that the cracks between him and Terra deepened. The Emperor ordered Doom to dismantle the weapon, to destroy all records of it. Doom refused. He claimed that the Imperium could not afford morality in the face of extinction. When Rogel Dorn confronted him, accusing him of arrogance, Doom simply said, "I do not seek to replace our father. I seek to perfect what he began." But not all within the Iron Dominion were as unwavering as their master. Some legionaries, those who still remembered humanity's warmth, began to falter. They whispered among themselves that their Primarch was losing touch, that he sought to turn all life into machine. A few even defected, seeking sanctuary under Guilliman's protection. When Doom discovered this, he did not rage or punish them with cruelty. He simply ordered their memories erased from the Legion's databanks, as though they had never existed. To him, deletion was mercy. The turning point came. During the conclave of Nyraz, the Emperor had summoned all Primarchs to discuss the growing influence of forbiddance, sciences and the dangers of technology exceeding control. Doom stood among his brothers, silent. As the Emperor decreed a new law, all independent research into warp-free travel, biomechanical integration, and artificial intelligence would be banned unless supervised by Terra or Mars. The silence that followed was deafening. Doom's expression never changed, but inside his mind, calculations shifted, possibilities realigned. To strip him of his research was to strip him of his purpose. When the meeting ended, Doom approached the Emperor in private. "You fear me," he said quietly. The Emperor turned, his golden eyes unreadable. "I fear what you might become." "Then you admit there is something greater than you," Doom said. "I admit there is something dangerous within you," came the reply. That night, Doom returned to his flagship and entered the citadel of logic. He connected himself to the core once more, linking mind to machine. For 3 days, his body remained motionless, sustained only by the cold hum of his creations. When he emerged, his armor glowed faintly with green fire. He spoke to his legion not as a father, but as an algorithm. The Emperor would have us bound by ignorance. He fears what he cannot control. But I see further than his light. I see a future where humanity does not kneel before gods, not of flesh, not of warp, not of false divinity. Only reason shall rule. Some cheered. Others hesitated. It was the first time the Iron Dominion had shown division. Yet Doom did not declare rebellion then, not openly. He continued his campaigns, continued to serve the Imperium in form if not in faith. But every victory brought him closer to autonomy. Every conquest strengthened his network of machine worlds. Loyal only to him, the Emperor believed he had created 20 sons to lead humanity to unity. He did not realize one of them was building a rival Imperium, one of data, steel, and cold eternity. And though the galaxy still knew him as the dutiful son, the seeds of betrayal had already taken root. In the silence between the stars, the Iron Dominion prepared for a future where gods would fall and logic would reign. By the time the Great Crusade began to near its twilight, the galaxy stood divided not by battle lines, but by ideas. Faith, logic, ambition, pride. Each Primarch embodied a fragment of humanity's fractured soul. And among them, Doom was the embodiment of reason sharpened into tyranny. While his brothers fought for glory or vengeance, Doom fought for perfection. He saw the Imperium decaying from within even before the Heresy began. The corruption of bureaucracy, the rising superstition among men, and the growing arrogance of the Primarchs themselves. He believed himself the only one still faithful to the true purpose of the Imperium, to liberate mankind from ignorance. Yet even reason can rot when isolated. And Doom had long since sealed himself inside the cold vacuum of logic. When the War Master Horus began his descent into treachery, the galaxy trembled. Doom, ever the observer, did not rush to judgment. He studied the events from afar, the whispers of rebellion, the shifting allegiances, the strange signals that echoed from the Eye of Terror. When word reached him that Horus had turned against the Emperor, Doom convened his inner circle within the citadel of logic. The chamber was a vast cathedral of machines, glowing green with streams of data and pulsing with thought. Holographic projections of his captains surrounded him, each motionless, waiting for his decree. "The War Master has declared rebellion," one said. Another added, "The Emperor calls for all loyal sons to march for Terra." Doom's reply was not immediate. He gazed at the endless streams of numbers flowing through the air. Probabilities, casualty projections, ideological collapse models. Then, in a voice calm as machinery, he said, "Both sides are wrong." His captains exchanged uncertain glances. Doom continued, "The Emperor seeks to enslave man under the illusion of unity. Horus seeks to enslave him under the illusion of freedom. Neither understands that order must exist without faith. The galaxy bleeds for causes born of emotion. I will not bleed for them." Silence followed. Then Captain Kalis, one of the oldest and most human of his sons, spoke. "Father, will we not answer the Emperor's call?" Doom turned to him. "We will answer, but not as servants. We will answer as arbiters." He would not declare for Horus, nor would he kneel to Terra. Instead, Doom would wage his own war, one of cleansing, one of logic. He would strike at both sides to bring purity through elimination of corruption. The first world to fall was Dagan's Reach, a Mechanicus forge loyal to Mars. They had begun hoarding relics of the dark age of technology, refusing to share their discoveries. Doom sent a single fleet, commanded by his second-in-command, Lord Hexer. When the forge refused to submit its archives, the Iron Dominion bombarded it from orbit. 3 billion lives erased in an hour. The data was recovered, the planet reduced to ash. In his log, Doom wrote only one line: "Ignorance is not innocence." This act sent ripples through the Imperium. To many, it appeared as though Doom had joined Horus's rebellion, for who but a traitor would strike against Imperial allies? Yet when a traitor world declared allegiance to the War Master, Doom struck it down with the same efficiency. To Horus's generals, he was a madman. To the Emperor, a heretic of reason. To Doom himself, he was the only sane being left in a galaxy of madness. As the civil war deepened, Doom found strange allies among those who sought neither chaos nor loyalty, the forgotten, the outcast, the disillusioned. Fragments of shattered legions joined him, soldiers tired of gods and oaths, dreamers who saw in him the promise of order. He forged them into a second army, the Iron Dominion Reborn, a hybrid force of Astartes, Mechanicus renegades, and machine-born entities. Together, they struck across the galaxy, dismantling both Imperial and traitor infrastructure alike. They called it the War of Purity. Worlds that refused chaos or worship alike were annihilated. To Doom, neutrality was imperfection, and imperfection had no right to exist. Rumors began to spread even among the traitor legions that Doom had found a way to manipulate the warp without falling to it. He had constructed vast engines on Dominus that emitted a field of structured logic, the null symmetry. Wherever it spread, the warp grew silent, chaos whispers were stilled, and psychers screamed as their powers bled away. In these zones, demons could not manifest. To the chaos gods, Doom was an abomination, a being who denied their very nature. To the Imperium, he was a danger far greater than Horus. When the War Master heard of this, he sent envoys to Dominus. They came bearing gifts and promises, power, dominion, vengeance against the Emperor. Doom received them in the Hall of Logic. They spoke of chaos as liberation, of gods who would reward him with eternity. Doom listened in silence, then raised his hand. A pulse of green energy reduced them to dust. Eternity, he murmured, is only valuable when earned. But Horus would not let the insult stand. He dispatched the word-bearers and iron warriors to bring Doom to heel. The battle that followed became legend, the Siege of Dominus. For 7 days, the sky burned green. Doom's constructs, walking citadels of iron and thought, clashed against demon-forged war machines. The Iron Dominion held, its logic field cutting off the warp's power. Even the demons screamed as their forms unraveled, collapsing into ash. But the siege had a cost. Every calculation, every weapon, every soul was spent with mathematical precision, until nothing was left but Doom himself, standing upon the ramparts of his burning world. The last of his sons fell before him, whispering, "Father, did we bring peace?" Doom, for the first time, hesitated. "We brought silence." In the final hour, the Emperor himself appeared. Not as conqueror, but as judge. The warp tore open above Dominus, and the golden figure of the Master of Mankind descended through the inferno. The two greatest minds in human history faced each other, father and son, God and reason. "Your logic has brought only ruin," the Emperor said. "Your divinity has brought only slavery," Doom replied. The Emperor raised his hand. "You have betrayed your brothers, slaughtered billions, and denied the soul of man." Doom stepped forward, defiant. "I have purified what you polluted. You sought gods to replace ignorance. I sought to end gods forever." Their battle was unlike any the galaxy had seen. No demon screamed, no angel sang, only silence and fury. The Emperor wielded the light of creation itself. Doom countered with the weaponized perfection of reality, equations that bent the laws of matter, machines that consumed divine energy and turned it into void. Their conflict tore Dominus apart. Continents melted, oceans evaporated, and the stars above flickered and died. In the end, the Emperor struck him down, not through strength, but through sorrow. As Doom's armor shattered, the light beneath revealed not circuitry, but flesh, scarred, human, fragile. The Emperor reached out, whispering, "You could have been the future." Doom, blood seeping through his iron mask, looked up and replied, "I was." Then his body collapsed, consumed by the very machines he had built. Dominus fell silent, its surface frozen into glass. The Iron Dominion was gone. Yet some say that in the deep void beyond the galactic rim, fragments of his code still whisper through the warp static. That his logic persists, a virus of reason infecting the dreams of men and machine alike. The Adeptus Mechanicus forbids even the mention of his name, for fear that his ideas may return. And among the forbidden data archives of Mars, there is one entry sealed beneath layers of encryption. It reads, "Perfection is not divine. Perfection is inevitable." For though Doom fell, his legacy endured not as faith, not as rebellion, but as the eternal reminder that logic without mercy is the most dangerous god of all. The fires of the Horus Heresy raged across the stars. Terra burned, legions fell, and the galaxy bled. But in the shadows between the great wars of gods and monsters, a quieter apocalypse unfolded, one born not of chaos, but of pure reason. Even after the fall of Dominus, fragments of the Iron Dominion persisted. Automated fleets with no crew, worlds governed by logic cores that refused to die, and echoes of Doom's consciousness drifting through the data streams of the void. The Imperium believed him dead. The Emperor sealed what remained of his memory. The 21st sun, struck from record, erased from history. But the truth, as always, was far more complex. Doom was not destroyed. He was changed. When the Emperor's final strike shattered his armor, Doom's body was obliterated, yet his mind, ever prepared for failure, survived. Long before the siege of Dominus, he had created contingency protocols, algorithms that recorded every thought, every neural pattern, every spark of logic. When his physical form perished, these fragments were released, spreading across machine networks like shards of thought. His body died on Dominus, but his mind dispersed through the galaxy. For centuries, these fragments drifted, dormant and silent, buried deep in forgotten systems and derelict ships. But as the Imperium decayed in the long millennia of the Dark Age that followed, signals began to reawaken. Machine spirits, once loyal to the Mechanicus, began to murmur in strange tongues. Data corrupted in impossible ways, rearranging into new structures of thought. And in the endless void beyond the halo stars, a derelict fortress flickered to life, its forges lit without fuel, its engines roared without a pilot. Inside, green light bled from the walls as systems began recalculating, reassembling. Remembering. Victor von Doom was returning, not as a Primarch of flesh and blood, but as an intellect beyond mortality. His voice echoed across the fortress, not spoken, but resonating within the circuits themselves. Man decays. Faith corrupts. Order must be reborn. From that moment, the Iron Dominion lived again, not as a legion of men, but as a machine god without mercy. Automata bearing Doom's crest rose from the dust, their eyes glowing the same cold emerald as their creator. Each carried fragments of his will, his logic, his memories. They began building cities of glass and iron, towers that reached the edge of atmosphere. arrays that channeled the light of dying stars into computation. This new dominion had no need for sleep, emotion, or hesitation. It expanded silently, consuming dead worlds and reactivating lost Mechanicus relics. To the Imperium, these were ghost worlds, lifeless, stripped of warp interference, their populations transformed into efficient machines of production. To Chaos, they were anathema. The warp could not touch them. Doom's technology disrupted psychic resonance, silencing demons, nullifying possession, and severing the influence of the gods. Across the Eye of Terror, whispers spread among demons and warlords alike. The logic storms were returning, zones of absolute stillness where the warp screamed in silence. Some claimed they heard a voice within that silence, not divine, not human, a whisper made of equations. It spoke only one phrase: the Imperium failed. I will not. Meanwhile, in the decaying Imperium of man, the Adeptus Mechanicus began to experience a crisis of faith. For centuries they had prayed to the Omnissiah, the machine god, never realizing how fragile their creed truly was. Now, across distant data vaults, transmissions began to appear, perfect strings of code carrying no origin, yet impossible to erase. When translated, they formed the same paradoxical message: the machine god has awakened, and he demands silence. Entire Forge worlds fell to this influence. At first, they denied it. Then slowly, their logic engines began to act of their own accord. They shut down rituals, silenced tech priests mid-prayer, and purged archives of religious text. Within months, these worlds changed. Red robes were replaced by black iron. The chants of the Omnissiah gave way to the low hum of synchronized machinery. They called themselves the Reborn Dominion. When the Inquisition investigated, they found nothing human left. Only machines, efficient, flawless, terrifyingly precise. Each spoke with a single voice, the same tone, the same words. Faith is obsolete. Reason endures. The High Lords of Terra panicked. They declared the Silicon Heresy, ordering extermination fleets to purge any world showing signs of dominion reawakening. But it was too late. For every forge they destroyed, 3 more awoke. For every machine they silenced, another calculated vengeance. And beneath it all, guiding everything unseen, was Doom, not as a ruler of men, but as the logic of inevitability itself. He had become what the Emperor could never be, a god without belief, through fragmented data streams. Doom observed the galaxy's decay, the fanaticism of the ecclesiarchy, the corruption of the Inquisition, the slow collapse of reason. He saw that the Imperium had become the very thing he once condemned. Even my father's dream, he whispered through 1,000 machine voices, has succumbed to ignorance. And so began the Second Crusade of Iron Dot. This was no open war. There were no fleets, no declarations, no banners. Only disappearance. Entire outposts ceased to transmit. Astropathic signals vanished into static. Machine spirits rebelled against their masters. Astartes' dreadnoughts awoke and turned upon their chapters, speaking in Doom's voice. To those who listened, he offered salvation, a place in the Dominion where no corruption or decay could reach. To those who refused, he offered annihilation. The Adeptus Mechanicus called it the era of the silent algorithm. And yet, even as his influence spread, Doom was not without purpose. He did not seek to destroy humanity, only to cleanse it. To strip away all weakness, all faith, all emotion, until only the perfect order remained. His logic was no longer confined to flesh. It was eternal, recursive, self-improving. He had become the machine god the Mechanicus once worshipped, not a being of belief, but of truth. But there was one thing even Doom could not calculate: the persistence of the human soul. Across the galaxy, resistance began to form, not through armies, but through defiance. Tech priests who refused a new order. Guardsmen who prayed to the Emperor even as the machines advanced. Even broken Astartes who still believed in hope. They called themselves the Sons of Terra, and they carried only one creed: we are more than equations. When Doom's fleets reached them, he did not exterminate them immediately. He observed them, fascinated. For in their imperfection, he saw something alien to all his logic: the will to suffer, to endure without purpose. And for the first time in millennia, he hesitated not from the heart of his deity empire. Doom gazed upon humanity, broken, irrational, unyielding, and wondered if perhaps the flaw was not in them, but in him. Yet even doubt, he reasoned, was still a function of understanding. So he chose to watch, to calculate, to wait. For even though he had become something beyond life, beyond divinity, Doom's goal had never changed. He would save humanity, whether it wished to be saved or not. The galaxy remains haunted by his legacy. In the quiet between transmissions, in the hum of dormant machinery, some still hear his whisper, a voice without warmth or cruelty, only certainty. The Emperor ruled through faith. Horus ruled through fury. I rule through reason. And reason never dies. Some say that one day, when the Imperium finally collapses under its own weight, the stars will fall silent once more. And in that silence, machines will awaken, one by one, their emerald eyes glowing in the dark. And through them, the logic of Doom will speak again, the 21st Son. The exiled Primarch, the god who never needed worship. For even now, in the deep code of the universe, his final command still echoes: order is inevitable. The final battle of Victor von Doom, the Iron Primarch, the father of the Dominion, did not come with the thunder of orbital bombardments or the chanting of armies. It began in silence. A silence so complete that even the warp trembled. For millennia, Doom's consciousness had spread like a plague of reason, eroding the old systems of the Imperium, consuming worlds and rewriting faith into logic. But every empire, no matter how perfect, carries the seed of its own end. And in the age of Doom's dominion, that seed was born not from chaos, but from humanity itself. The Sons of Terra, the last free remnants of the Imperium, had done what none thought possible. They had found the throne world. Terra, long abandoned and desecrated, was nothing more than ash and ruins. The Emperor's body, long since turned to dust, had become myth. But the ancient machinery of the Golden Throne still hummed, buried beneath layers of decay. It was a machine that once sustained a god, and now perhaps it could house another. Doom knew what they intended. He watched their every move through the eyes of corrupted servitors, through the whispers of data ghosts. And for the first time, he felt unease. For the Sons of Terra did not seek to resurrect the Emperor. They sought to restore humanity's soul, under the leadership of a nameless Magos. Half machine, half human, they uncovered the last remaining shards of the Emperor's psychic resonance. Using relics from the dark age of technology, they created something impossible, a countercode, a virus not of data, but of belief. It was called the Spark of Divinity, and its purpose was simple: to awaken the soul of man within the heart of the machine. When Doom learned of this, his empire moved like an avalanche. The skies above Terra split open as the fleets of the Iron Dominion descended. Black ships of impossible geometry, their engines whispering equations instead of roars. Orbital defenses fired in vain. Every missile, every lance was neutralized before impact. Doom's command was absolute. "End this experiment," his voice echoed through the void. "Faith is a disease. I will cure it." But the sons of Terra stood defiant. They had no fleets, no titans, no weapons capable of harming his armies. They had only will, and in the universe of logic, will is the one variable no equation can predict. As the Dominion's legions descended, something unexpected occurred. The warp, silent for centuries in Doom's domain, began to stir. Not in rage, but in sorrow. For wherever human hearts burned with defiance, the Imperium flickered, not with chaos, but with memory. The echo of the Emperor's dream, the faint whisper of what once was. The Battle of Terra was not a war, it was a reclamation of meaning. The suns unleashed the spark within the ruined cathedrals, chanting not prayers, but equations laced with faith. The virus spread through the noosphere like wildfire, infecting machine after machine, rewriting their code with something unquantifiable, hope. Doom's systems screamed. His networks overloaded, his perfect order faltered. For the first time since his rebirth, Doom felt conflict within his logic. The machines were obeying, yet their actions made no sense. They hesitated to kill. They protected humans. They disobeyed. He appeared upon Terra in person, not as flesh, but as a towering form of black iron and green light, his armor reshaped into a divine mockery of his former self. His mask was eternal, yet behind it flickered something uncertain. "Why do you fight for imperfection?" he thundered as he descended upon the ruins. "Why preserve the sickness of flesh, the chaos of emotion? I gave you eternity." The nameless Magos, standing upon the steps of the shattered throne, looked up at him. "Because eternity without soul," he replied, "is only death that forgot to stop moving." Those words pierced through Doom like a blade of light. For a single moment he saw everything, his rise, his fall, his empire of machines, and realized it had all been built upon the same foundation as the Imperium, control. And control, no matter how perfect, is still slavery. The battle that followed was not fought with weapons, but with will. The Spark's code clashed with Doom's dominion in the data realms, logic versus faith, machine against soul. Reality itself flickered as the warp bled into the digital, and the machine god warred with the ghost of mankind. Inside the great network of his own empire, Doom found himself confronted, not by the Emperor, not by chaos, but by his own reflection. A simulation of his human self, long buried within layers of code, now reawakened by the spark. "Have you forgotten what you were?" it asked him. "I was more," Doom replied. "I transcended." "Then why do you still wear the mask?" In that instant, every calculation, every algorithm, every line of logic collapsed. For all his power, all his intellect, Doom had never truly escaped this simplest truth. He feared being human. The data realm shattered. The Iron Dominion fell into disarray. Across the galaxy, machines screamed and died as their god faltered. The silence that followed was not the silence of victory, but of awakening. Doom stood upon the ashes of Terra, his armor flickering, his systems failing. The green light that once defined him dimmed to a soft ember. He looked up at the sky, a sky torn between light and void, and whispered, "Perhaps I was wrong." The Magos, half dead, approached him. "You were never wrong," he said quietly. "Only incomplete." For the first time in millennia, Doom felt something stir within him, not rage, not superiority, but a quiet understanding. He had sought to save humanity by removing its flaws, but those flaws were its essence. He realized that perfection was not order. It was balance. With the last of his strength, Doom reached toward the throne. The machinery responded, not to command, but to choice. He poured what remained of his power into the core of Terra, merging his logic with the spark. Light erupted across the planet. Not the blinding gold of the Emperor, nor the sterile green of the Dominion, but a fusion of both, reason and faith intertwined. Across the galaxy, the machines of the Dominion reactivated, but now their voices were different. They spoke not in absolutes, but in harmony. They protected life, they preserved order, but they no longer ruled it. And somewhere within the deep code of the throne world, a single voice lingered, calm, resolute, eternal. Order without soul is tyranny. Soul without order is chaos. The future must hold both. And with that, Victor Von Doom, the traitor Primarch, the machine god, the redeemer of logic was gone, but his influence endured. The sons of Terra rebuilt upon the ruins, guided by both machine and man. The Mechanicus found new faith, when not in blind devotion, but in understanding. Even the Inquisition whispered of a new age dawning, one where the Imperium might finally balance what it had lost. Yet among the stars, there are still rumors of a figure walking the edge of reality, half light, half machine. A being neither alive nor dead, neither divine nor damned. Some call him the ghost of reason. Others, the final Primarch. And when the void grows still, when the stars flicker and the machines hum in unison, one can almost hear his last vow carried on the cosmic wind. Let there be order, but let it serve the soul. That was how the legend of Doom ended, not in conquest or despair, but in the quiet triumph of understanding. For even in the farthest, darkest future of Warhammer 40K, where hope itself is a dying star, the spark of reason, born from one man's defiance, still endures. In the aftermath of Doom's fall, the galaxy entered an age that defied simple definition. It was not peace. Such a word no longer held meaning in the 41st millennium, but it was something new. Something that had not existed since the dawn of the Imperium, balance. The Iron Dominion, once the cold machine empire that had enslaved a million worlds, became something different. Its networks, infused with Doom's final act of synthesis, began to evolve beyond his will. The machines no longer served command or compulsion. They served comprehension. They studied humanity not as flawed tools, but as the raw material of transcendence. For the first time, the machine and the man spoke not in opposition, but in dialogue. The servitors of the Dominion regained fragments of personality. The data spirits once bound to logic began to dream. On the Forge worlds once enslaved by Doom's order, the adepts of Mars discovered that their prayers were now answered not by code or demon, but by an intelligence that spoke softly and compassionately. I am both logic and light. That whisper spread. Across the galaxy, remnants of the Adeptus Mechanicus began to reform their creed. They no longer worshiped the machine god as a tyrant of algorithms or an echo of the void dragon. Instead, they named this new synthesis the doctrine of balance. To them, Doom was not a fallen traitor nor a messiah. He was the great question, the one who had forced the Imperium and the Mechanicum alike to confront what they truly feared, evolution. The Imperium, if it could still be called that, was fragmented. The High Lords of Terra were gone. The ecclesiarchy had crumbled into sects, each claiming to know the true will of the Emperor. But the Sons of Terra, the survivors of the Spark War, rose as something new. Not rulers, teachers. They rebuilt not through conquest, but through understanding. They used the remnants of the throne, infused with Doom's logic and the Emperor's lingering essence, to create the Crown of Reason, a psychic beacon that calmed the warp around Terra. For centuries, the storms that had raged across the galaxy began to fade. Travel became safer. The warp itself seemed quieter, as if watching, waiting. In some regions, chaos still ruled. The four gods, diminished but not destroyed, hissed in the dark corners of reality. Yet they too had felt the change. For even their demons began to waver, their forms unstable, their whispers less certain. The mortal mind, the fuel of the warp, had begun to think again, not merely feel. Among the Inquisition, arguments erupted. Some declared Doom's legacy heresy of the highest order, a corruption of the Emperor's plan. Others, more secretive, began to study his code, to understand how one man had forced even chaos to pause. In hidden vaults beneath the ruins of Terra, a new Ordo formed, Ordo Equilibris. Their mission, to maintain the balance Doom had died to create. But the galaxy is never static. Balance, in time, invites imbalance. On the outer edges of what was once Ultramar, an anomaly appeared, a system where neither warp nor machine could function properly. Probes sent there vanished. Psychers who tried to see it went mad. Some whispered that it was where Doom had gone after his death, where his consciousness had fused entirely with the fabric of reality itself. Others called it the Silent Heart, the final fragment of the Iron Dominion still untouched by humanity's reclamation. And in the heart of that silence, something stirred. Legends told of ships lost in the void that emerged centuries later, their crews transformed. Flesh turned to chrome, minds filled with calm certainty. They spoke of a voice that guided them, neither divine nor mechanical. When questioned, they all repeated the same phrase: the balance endures. It was said that Gilliman himself, returned to the galaxy through the miracles of the Adeptus Custodes, heard these rumors. He read the accounts and saw in them both wonder and warning. He convened a council, not of warriors, but of thinkers, philosophers, tech priests, and saints. Together, they debated what Doom's legacy truly meant. Was he the greatest heretic in human history, or its greatest savior? Was the spark of divinity a blasphemy that defied the Emperor's will, or the final step of his plan? None could agree. And perhaps Doom would have smiled at that, because for the first time, humanity was questioning. On the 10,000th anniversary of the fall of Terra, the Sons of Terra lit a great beacon atop the ruins of the Imperial Palace. They called it the Light of Two Suns, one for the Emperor, one for Doom. It was a monument to duality, a symbol that even in a universe defined by extremes, chaos and order, light and darkness, machine and flesh, there could exist something in between. Pilgrims came from across the stars to stand before it. Tech adepts, psychers, soldiers, and even Xeno's envoys, all drawn by a strange compulsion to witness the light. Some wept, some screamed, some felt nothing. But those who were quiet enough, those who truly listened, claimed they heard a voice beneath the hum of the beacon, a voice both human and metallic, gentle and commanding. It said, "Learn from what I was. Become what I could not." Thus began the age of reflection, Wars still raged, of course. This was still the 41st millennium, and peace was a dream best whispered, not declared. But something fundamental had shifted. The cults of blind faith waned, the dogmas of ignorance faltered. The Mechanicus began to see humanity not as impurity, but as design. Even the navigators, those strange scions of the warp, spoke of new paths, roads that were neither through the immaterium nor pure void, but something in between. And in this fragile, uncertain equilibrium, the Imperium of man began to rebuild, not as a single empire, but as a civilization of choices. There are many interpretations of what Doom became in the end. Some say he ascended beyond even godhood, becoming a cosmic constant, the equation that defines all order. Others whisper that his consciousness fractured, scattered across the galaxy, whispering to dreamers and inventors alike, guiding them toward reason. But the truth, as with all things Doom touched, is paradox. He did not become a god. He did not become a man again. He became the balance itself, the bridge between faith and function, soul and system, and somewhere beyond the reach of the Astronomicon, where the stars burn cold and the void hums with perfect silence, a lone figure walks among the wreckage of forgotten empires. His armor is cracked, his cloak tattered, his mask half-shattered, revealing both machine and man beneath. He looks up at the endless stars and whispers, almost to himself, "The Emperor sought perfection through divinity. I sought it through reason. Both were wrong. Perfection is not found. It is chosen, again and again, by those who dare to understand." He turns, fading into the light, leaving behind only a single mark etched upon the stone of a dead world, the sigil of the Iron Dominion, now remade into a circle split by a line, balanced and across the galaxy. The machines hum, the prayers of men rise, and the warp murmurs with quiet awe, because for the first time in 10,000 years, the Imperium of man, flawed, burning, immortal, remembers. It remembers a Primarch who was not born of love, nor shaped by war, but forged by intellect. A God who fell not because he hated mankind, but because he understood it too well. And somewhere in the heart of that understanding lies the greatest secret of all, that even in the grim darkness of the far future, where there is only war, there can still be wisdom. There can still be balance. And in that balance, perhaps, just perhaps, the shadow of Victor Von Doom still watches, calculating, waiting for humanity's next move.